I'm very pleased to have you here.
Yes.
Prost, Meg Stuart.
Yeah.
Very good. How are you?
I am good. Yeah.
Did you see the show yesterday, or were you
Yes,
somewhere?
I was on the third row. Yeah.
And how does that feel to see it?
Actually, I was remembering that we were working on it a year earlier, and so I was in a kind of memory zone also, thinking about the year before and how it was to work on it. But yeah, it's very close, so I felt really, I could see all the details, and I love to watch. I'm not one of these directors who, after the premiere, they're gone. I'm kind of maybe hovering. I'm really tracking, and for me, the work is never completely finished. I'm always sort of tweaking it, because I feel like I start to understand it when it's playing in different places and as it moves through the time. So yeah, I like to see it. Yeah.
So you started, and then the pandemic came, and you had to interrupt, and then you sort of finished it after it was possible again to work together.
Yes, I mean, yes, we started in, I think, January. I mean, the first rehearsals were in January 2020, and then, yeah, I premiered it in July in Vienna this summer. So strange, because one of the first impulses was I wanted to work with rupture and interruption and with time. And I was always like, they're going to do something, and they're going to work with a lot of energy and a lot of effort, but there's always going to be something that kind of disrupts the scene, you know, and then they'll realize that the magic is happening when it's not happening. You know, like I had this, but it was quite abstract, you know, and then like to have this one as an impulse, and then to experience it like we all did, but to experience it in this work, you know, what it did to our understanding of time and determination to kind of complete, and how we had to keep adapting to different spaces and situations. And I think the premiere was postponed like 8 times. It was almost going to happen. But actually it was very helpful for us because I kept developing the piece, and we could work in theaters on the way. So that was also really great to be able to really rehearse in different theaters. Thinking maybe we're going to have an audience, but then and it not happening.
But as I can imagine, you would not be an artist who would like to be streamed, so to say, because as the pandemic started, we all had this, or felt this weird, a bit hysterical thing with streaming things. And there were lots of people who said, why don't we stream anyway? Why do we go to the theater? And so I think I heard you say that, or I read that somewhere, that you also said you're not so much into this streaming thing. You want to be a live artist.
I mean, I also in the last year, I did a small concert performance in a kind of gallery, jazz club in Berlin with my partner, and it was very, very intimate, very small, and the fact that this very intimate kind of one-off improvisation could be streamed, that was quite interesting. But a piece like Cascade, to stream it, that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I think you really need to have the complete experience, and with the music, with the way the set is meeting the performers, and the way they're, you know, what they exert and what they go through. You have to experience the time, and you have to do it live. I mean, I don't see we will ever stream this piece. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes I have the impression that specifically in these times, some people sort of mix up the expression of the user and of the visitor. I mean, when you go to the theater, or you go to a concert, or to a dancing performance, you're a visitor, you're not a user. And I think these things get sometimes mixed up a bit. When you are sitting on your sofa at home and you watch Netflix, then you might be a user, but that's not the same. So I think this discussion might be something that will go on for quite a long time.
Also that, I mean, okay, I don't know, there's still something about the ritual of going to the theater and sharing the view and what it takes for like the performers, the technicians, and all these people from, they're living all over Europe, and how they come together and how they perform. It's like, it's not something you can binge and you can pick up when you feel like that you sit with this and you plan. And also just that, like, we're going to see this work, this work this evening and what that means. I don't think this is going to shift in all that I think we have now maybe a new understanding of space and maybe how, we have to be more flexible. There'll be other ways of experiencing things, but I think that we still need to come together, and I love to be in the theater with other people as well. I don't want this to go away. It's been going on for so long in our life.
But it's maybe it's an interesting question concerning the fact that I sometimes have the impression that not everybody wants to go back. For instance, yesterday there was a friend of mine, a colleague from the theater, also a long-time friend of mine, and she came from Switzerland, and she works as a set designer, and she said, Switzerland now seems to have a problem that the big theaters in the big cities, they reopen, but that the audience doesn't come. And that she has this bad and dark suspicion that at least some of them might say, it went quite well without these cultural institutions, so why should we go now? So what can we tell these people?
I don't know. Their gaze, their presence also makes the work. It's not. It matters. We're all in a field of experience. We're exchanging information not only with language. Who's in the room also makes the work. That how they're thinking, how they're approaching it. That from the difference of a premiere or with its other, bunch of students in the like. It's having impact on what takes place live. What's interesting about Cascade is that it completely worked here and packed, but it also really, I think it can really work in a larger space where there's a lot of air around. Because I also was always in question, why these big theaters? Why, what are we going to do in these big theaters? And so that's one thing. And I also feel like there was so much, during this break, that wasn't a break, about let's research, let's get into a process, let's do practice, which was something, let's go into the archive. And that was also, I think, something, but I think there was also this desire still to compose and to complete and to share this and to, to create, but really work on the notion of composition as well, and also in a unconventional way, and also kind of self-initiated. I felt a lot of artists that I know are kind of composing or creating in spaces, or with material they don't usually use, or known for. So I found that really also important. So if we're only just in a kind of only processing and researching, then I think we're all kind of shaken by the situation, and I think we have to honor what was working and how we move a different way of perspective into the work, but also let's expand let's don't go back into our own kind of habits as well. We can go to the theater at different timings, we can gather in different kinds of configurations, we can go for a walk, and these things are liberating also, just to think it's possible that, we need audience. I felt that dancers also, the piece is so full of a kind of physical intensity, and it was boiling. They're like, I'm a dancer, I need an audience, I need to I need to move. And it was also coming out of the time. So not this sense of like, well, these are the rules and let's get passive and just say, well, that's fine. It's more like I didn't say we're at war, we're fighting, but like, this is really, really critical what we do. And it's also a way to understand what's going on, to understand it physically and understand the time and all that we've kind of been through as well. So, yeah.
That's absolutely true, and I think that one of the weird aspects of this pandemic, besides all the like professional issues and the catastrophe of people dying of this illness, of course, there's one thing that I am constantly thinking around, and that is this weird thing that there seems to be a lack of tenderness, which has so much to do with how we live and how many times we touch each other or approach each other or kiss each other. And this weird, when you would read that in a novel, you'd always say, well, they exaggerate, there can't be an illness that is spread all over the place where people are not allowed to approach each other. So this is what's happening. And so that's now and then something that I think we are still so privileged that we can be, as artists, we can have this testing, monitoring, and we can be safe. And then, of course, we are allowed to hug or something like that. But many people, also elderly people and old people, are just kept in a physical distance for quite a long time, and also many young people and children. And that's, for me, a sort of very weird thing to think about, like a state of hell or something like that, because I think tenderness is such an important power against all the aggression that we have constantly for 24 hours. And so it's a really evil virus, I think.
I mean, I think, this kind of anxiety, like what is the right spaces? How are we together? How do we... there's something when you can touch, greet, hug. I mean, sometimes it's like, well, maybe... I mean, one thing I was just always pissed off is about the language. The word lockdown is something like normal, like we're all using it. That just seems so brutal. Can they call it shelter, like safe sheltering, or instead of social distancing, social respect? Maybe, there's just something that this language became kind of so, I don't know, sort of confining and kind of heavy, and something we have to get together with, and I don't know, there's something that I find very strange.
Also in this gesture of constant multiplication of these expressions. You read them 500,000 times every day in the newspaper, so they don't really mean anything anymore, although they mean something. I think that's an interesting aspect, what you just said, that the pandemic, of course, takes a lot of influence into the language that we speak and that we read and write and all that. That's a huge thing. I mean, you're a choreographer, so there's not so much spoken text, but there is spoken text. But also for us, for the theater, of course, within the language, it has a certain influence.
I mean, we talk a lot about a kind of your body is not yours, or your body is sort of channeling, or it's a conduit of energies or forces, or it's processing, or that there's like layers of energies or histories in a space or between, so we're projecting on each other. So there's we work a lot with this sort of invisible, making the invisible visible, so that it's, a simple touch is not so simple, because it's I don't know, because the space between memory and what's happening, and it's just so, and then we were like, wait a minute, this invisible something is the equalizer, and it's also the disruptor, and it's this force, and it's this thing, and it's, that. somehow I had to kind of look at these tasks and these exercises we've been working with from another perspective. But I mean, I still kept going. I mean, I was teaching classes with a mask, contact improvisation without touching. You know what I mean? Like how, because we are meeting still, we all are still touching each other just through the distance. So it's not like there's any way to kind of step aside. So just the sense of like, continuing with different kinds of assumptions or expectations. I also found that like things that I think would never be like, this has to be, or this would never get canceled, or this tour would never, or performances would like, that's from one to the moment things would shatter. Yeah. And that's again like relating to the piece, because I was like, we're gonna fall, and that's just a pure, simple physical thing in all different ways. But then what are we letting go of, and what's falling? Like our, how we think things are, our ego, our need to do, our wish, our like what's falling and what's shattering, and then what do we want to give space for? I mean, I think that's where we're all at. What can we share, and what are we going to cultivate, and in that falling, how actually were we getting closer, even that's something we were working on physically. Like, well, it seems like only when the world is kind of askew and tipping and we don't have fixed positions and we're kind of off balance, there's a kind of other kind of understanding, or proximate understanding. And what is that? And how do we negotiate this? So maybe to not be in just such clear, fixed positions, I'm talking from a choreographic perspective, it has something. I mean, I think, and how do we support each other from that space? Like my mother, for example, she she had no contact for like a year and a half, but she was safe. So it's very strange. Yeah.
Did she talk about that? How she felt in this period of time?
Yeah, just alone, because that's also like so urgent, so necessary, but at the same time, so strange stuff. I mean, I do feel very grateful, very lucky that somehow we managed to, create these bubbles of creativity, art making together, and be together, and that was.
I thought that was a very interesting aspect in your show. What you just said, that a group of individuals, they all have their own ways of doing something or moving, and they would not now and then not take contact with each other, and then suddenly they start to interact, and there's something going on, and there might be some sort of a force or tenderness or taking care of each other, and then they are spread all over the place again. I thought, when I was seeing that, and I liked it very, very much, I thought that this had so much to do with exactly this feeling that we all had when we were working and we could rehearse. So there was this group coming together, exchanging energy, but then everybody had to go home, and then the weekends were kind of weird, because then everything was gone. And so that change of situations is very intense in your show, I think, and even to a state of where I have the impression that it's still a bit improvised. Maybe that's not true, but I had the impression that it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when we rehearsed in Paris, we would be working, and then it would be we'd eat dinner, we'd run home, and normally there's that hangout after rehearsals.
Of course.
But I had an apartment and they were all together, so I was bye, and then I'm sitting alone in this apartment in Paris. Is also a very different way of making work. Yeah, it was funny. It is improvised. I the work is made through improvisation, like many. And the sense that you see them making choices live, that they're in, so that there's a kind of tension where they have to resolve something. I mean, like there's a big section that's kind of gaming, playing games without explicit rules, trying to, like, structures that are not apparent, and trying, you know, not like, okay, this is it, we do this score, but like, okay, we have to figure this out. And maybe if we have the right conditions and things align, we might get through the portal, we might understand something, or something will shift. Yeah, that was kind of how, and there was like a lot of layers of working on that. First, it was a kind of physicality that wasn't like dance material, like working with, you know, a soccer coach, and like, you know, when you become close because you both go for a ball, and then you have this kind of intimacy by accident. You know, it's not like, oh, hi, I want to be close to you. It's more like, I really want this too, you know. So that was like working on this, and when things aren't happening, and all of a sudden, like, you have to react, playing with time. And then we were also working with these like more abstract forms of angles and dimensions, and like just precarity, and what is it to kind of, how do you anchor someone else's kind of going for something? How do you create a kind of ecosystem, a system of support? And yeah, but definitely some parts are definitely improvised, and I think the more they play, they'll have more understanding, but then I'll probably have to scramble again because they'll know too well what they're doing. But yeah, there's a lot of improv inside, more than I've ever put into a group, like that's been in a group piece. And then also just like it was quite work to get them to trust that. Like, what are we doing? What, you know, because also it's sometimes like for them to trust that this is the work, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they trust me now, so that's good.
Yeah. No, I like this. I like this aspect that it is a show, and it's an excellent show. But now and then, you have a very interesting impression that some things might change every evening, right, and look improvised. But this is exactly what you want to see. You want to see this improvised character. For me, that became interesting after 10 minutes. I thought, oh, this is something different than I'm seeing here. So that was, and that for me had a lot to do probably with the general situation of the rehearsing phase, and this on-off thing, and this being close and being distant and all that.
I think the attempt and then the gap, like I want to be here, but there's an obstacle. I want this to happen. You know, it's like that. I think we also were embracing a kind of failure. I mean, like the stage set of Philip Kind, it's like really something, and you know, and then it just collapses and it's nothing. It's like, what set, what space? We're nowhere. Yeah. So that thing of like the endless restart. I think the other thing is like trying to work with different rhythms, like how just a simple thing of like how misunderstandings are formed because we just have a different rhythm, different timings, how to synchronize, how to integrate in a group structure where someone's really slow and someone's like, you know, like how can we move together, like in the end, or how can we, you know, maybe we'll never understand each other fully, but how can we still accept, you know, be, care and be one in a whole system, and and not feel like, okay, no, this is the right beat, this is the timing we have to have. So to honor these different rhythms was something we worked on also.
Yeah, that's very visible. There's a lot of individuality on stage. Right. There's an incredible lot to see. Just the differences of moving, even just walking. Right. And so, and it reminds me of the fact that actually everything is dance, or you can see everything as a dance, which doesn't mean that everybody can dance, but that was for me just a very important element yesterday, was this strong individuality, and even if they make similar movements, the movements are so totally different. And that's great to see, because in the normal corps de ballet, it's the opposite. So everybody has to somehow look the same. And so this is, in these times, I think this individual aspect is wonderful. And you said something very interesting about time. You were speaking about, if I remember properly, your expression was something like an ancient future, did you say? I think you were talking about ancient future, so like to have several perspectives of time, that we can nowadays go back into the past and try to see from there what the future for these people might have been, but what their future was is already the past for us. So to have like these many perspectives in art, I think is quite amazing. And I think it's also something that, for instance, historical scientists do, because they try to find out more and more and more about the past, and so they have to correct some stuff. The more information they have, the more sources they have to think about other reasons why people did something in the future, which is our past.
Right.
And so I thought that it's very interesting that you said that as an artist, as a choreographer, how can you deal with these phases and shiftings of time on stage?
Right. Well, also that you have the sense that what you do also influences the past. Like that it ripples in both directions, not like that. I find that super interesting, and also this like. I mean, I feel like that if you talk about time, you have to begin with uncertainty, and not like, oh, this is the clock and this is the time and here we are and then tomorrow, like. And maybe that now we really embodied that through the experience of the last years, but like that it's elastic, that things are influencing it, that things are literally, how do you make like an artwork that's not, we always say we're not interested in linearity, but what does that really mean? Because you're still moving in time, so how to, like just structurally, like, okay, you have loops or things are familiar, but they're not familiar. You feel like people know what they're doing, but they're not. So that I think I just wanted to kind of really offer this sort of, the sense of, okay, destabilized, like you really, like things are like thrown off, but it's still, we hold you there. We hold the audience, we hold each other, even if things are kind of not, are kind of shaking. And I don't know, I feel like we didn't like make a statement, time is this and that. I think we worked together, we played, we worked with the drumming, and we just tried to integrate movements and kind of, create different sort of fields. Also, like I tried to have one person in a certain world that they imagine that they're more in a kind of virtual reality, and then the others were more on like the here and now. So they're next to each other, they look like they're kind of doing the same movements, but one is imagining they're more in a kind of video game. So trying to put layers in the time. I think it could make many, many more pieces about time based on this. I feel like now, okay, wait a minute, maybe we should like slow down and like deconstruct it and continue working on that. I do think in the future, I mean, for all different reasons, we need to kind of reconnect to ancient practices. Like I think And also I feel like in all of our bodies we have many different times. I have the teenager in me always. I have the young child I have 20 years ago also. Like that idea that we have these different layers, and how a kind of energetic trigger from others or a situation sparks these different times that we've lived. I don't know. That's also something we were exploring. But
maybe this is also a privilege, what you just said, that when you work as an artist, that you have the possibility to really kind of sneak into all these phenomena of time. Sometimes I think when people just have like what we call a regular job, and they have to work a lot, and then they have this one aim which is in the distance, which means to stop working at a certain stage and then do nothing. And so I think for us it's a huge privilege to be on one side working constantly. We actually never stop because we watch everybody and everything, and on the other hand to really put everything into work, so that life and work in the end are one weird energetic mixture. And I think that's a privilege, although it's also monstrous, of course. I think that's interesting what you said, that you all have you have all your times, your biographical times constantly with you. And I also find very interesting that you said you can influence the past from the presence on. And I think that sort of underlines a very important aspect of the art, that we are constantly working with the dead. So dead people are not dead. A dead phase of time is never dead. So they are still with us, or we still practice what they have been practicing. What you just said, you think we have the ancient practice in us. And so I think that's very interesting to have an influence on what happened before, just to interpret it also in a different way.
I think also like actions not taken, what that does to energy in general, or we'll do this, or I dream this, and then it's like, no, somehow all that future dreaming, planning, wishing is still hanging around. It could still be hanging around, or you can just, you know what I mean? That kind of, I'm here, but I want to be here, or I chose this place, but all that before. So that's something just in the movement language. I think I don't even have to explain to them. We just talk about not movements, but states, the different states. And just a sense that it's, even when nothing's happening, so much is happening. I think that's,
That's probably true.
And even when it looks like they're doing so much, maybe exactly at that moment is like, what was that for what? Yeah. So that like different kind of value system or balance of being busy, showing up, like where is a moment where you feel most connected to the other, to the space you're in, to to your soul, to each other. Like to think this is a check-in, and I think that the audience is watching Cascade. They kind of go on that trip also. It's not like a piece with a story. It's a trip. I think it's a travel.
Mm. I just remembered the face of the owl. I was always very fascinated as a child when I went to the zoo, and there were the owls, and normally they don't do anything. They just stand there on a branch, and their eyes are open, very round, and then after 20 minutes they go like, so that's the only thing they do within 20 minutes. And if you are very lucky watching them, you might see this incredible movement of the head when they sort of turn their head like for 180 degrees and look backward and scratch themselves with the beak, and go back with the head, and then another. And so these two movements would be the only things that they do within an hour. And when you do that, when you watch them, you can really feel that you try to adapt to their feeling of time. I don't know if they have one, but I have one when I look at them. And so I think these qualities can now and then be interesting for humans, just to see how relative our nervous energy is, because an owl is an animal, and it's an intelligent animal, and it's seeing everything. You know, they see everything. So they are totally focused because they are constantly in danger. So I think that's weird to, I think it has a lot to do with dance also. Like, how do you reduce movements, just what you said. After a certain time, every movement is interesting and is important because it's a movement.
Yeah, if you take it in, if you really look, if you really take someone in, if you really see them. And I always wonder, where do people get their movements? I mean, like, how do people choose to dance? Like, especially when I see people in a party, but also how they hold their bodies. Like, I mean, that whole thing of where is body development, how they, you know, when they enter a room, or when they feel comfortable or less comfortable, or when they have to dance, like, maybe they don't know themselves. Some, of course, is imitation, but where do these movements come from? I find that super fascinating. But I haven't observed owls, but maybe that's something to...
It's spectacular. It's really spectacular. I mean, it's even more spectacular when they start to fly. That's huge. I mean, because they are so much bigger than they look like when they just sit there.
Right.
But this reduction of movement has something absolutely magic. And yeah, maybe we can still... I mean, we destroy everything, you know, we destroy nature, and so at a certain stage there might be not so much inspiration left for us, for things to see. What would you say to, I mean, you have a son who's a young man now, and kind of entering this weird phase of time. What would you say to the younger generation, how they can deal with this incredible weight that's just lying on their shoulder with destruction of nature, climate change, and pandemic and everything? Or is that an issue that you say you just don't talk about it because you just want to give them a lot of power anyway?
Well, I mean, I speak for, knowing him and his circle, growing up in Berlin, he's around a very sensible group that they, you know, it's not just where am I going to get into the system and the job and like, I feel there's something about this topic is a topic to mobilize around and to put all factors, especially for this generation, in terms of creativity, in terms of understanding distribution of power, in terms of passion, in terms of how we want to live, and somehow there's a topic. There's not beyond topic. There's, you know, if something was a crisis, like there's an urgency. I think just saying, well, what can we do, or it's just we're all like in a, you know, apocalyptic scenarios. It's just kind of. I think, you know, other generations are like keeping that vibe up and also kind of saying maybe sometimes no instead of yes to situations. Not we have to and we need to do that. Like, you know, like this sort of like deep positive support about what really moves the soul of the heart, and also about history and about, you know, I don't know. I feel like that. I don't know. I think it's survival, because I know when I was younger, I was quite depressive, and I always had a kind of my company's called Damaged Goods, and my first book is called Disfigure Study, And I began dancing with my shoulders up, and how, you know, like I never warmed up. Like I was coming from the punk. I was a punk. Like I had all this, and I don't say now, like I just celebrate, you know, light but I don't know, I just choose to, like, every bad rehearsal, there's something. Everything that doesn't work out is something. I mean, it sounds, things move, things have different timing, but they turn. They turn, and the moment where you have a realization and you're like, fuck, or it's fear, like, act on it, don't wait, act, you know, so I have a very, I don't know, I'm still here right now because of creating spaces that where you feel resilient and you feel supported and you feel brave and you feel like, let's keep questioning, let's keep playing, and it's not just keep trying, let's do it, let's make, let's compose,
Well, it's nice what you say, so to push back all these very easy-going dystopic fantasies that are around, because it's so boring, you know, it's so cheap to say, oh, tomorrow the world will be whoop, and instead of that, just to talk about power and engagement and coming together and helping each other. So I think that's the best thing we can do, and you said it in such a beautiful way, and I'm afraid that time is already
okay.
Thank you so much for being here, Meg, and thank you for your lovely performance. Thank you.